always felt like I was invisible in my own home, particularly when it came to my mother. The day of my sister's 21st birthday was no exception. It started cool and crisp outside, leaves rattling underfoot as the trees whispered secrets to one another in that almost conspiratorial way nature does. I stood at the edge of our driveway, arms crossed tightly against my chest. My breath misted in the air. I felt utterly exposed, as if the chill might seep through my skin right into my soul. It was a stark contrast to the warm, savory scent of breakfast wafting from the kitchen behind me, a scent that was not meant for me today. Inside, my sister was already the center of attention, her laughter ringing out like bells as our mother likely flitted around her, probably fussing over her hair or draping a new outfit on her like a lavish adornment. I could picture it clearly. My stomach twisted into knots as I thought about it. My mother's eyes would sparkle a little too brightly, as they always did when my sister was involved. I rolled my eyes in disbelief. Part of me wished I could drown out the noise, but another part, a smaller, quieter part, wanted to hear that laughter, to feel invited into the moment, even if just for a moment. But I knew better. "Ella, come in here and help me," my mother's voice called out. I hesitated, but eventually shoved my hands into the pockets of my hoodie and tried to mask my frustration as I walked into the sun-soaked kitchen. There they were, my mother and sister, a world of warmth that I was not part of. "What do you need?" I asked, my tone as casual as I could muster, though every word felt coated in vinegar. "There you are. Can you hold this? We have to get everything arranged for later," my mother chirped, not even looking directly at me, but rather waving me toward a heap of brightly colored gift bags piled on the kitchen table, each one adorned with ribbons that seemed to shine like promises. Sure. I stepped closer to the table, gripping the first bag and instantly feeling the weight of the expectations that came with it. Anyone need help with an actual birthday cake? Looks like we are just on gift duty here. Ah, we will manage the cake. You focus on getting everything ready for Jess, my mother replied dismissively. The use of my sister's name instead of her age felt deliberate. It reminded me of how my mother cherished every little moment and milestone from Jess's life, while mine barely registered. Already, the bitterness was seeping back in. "But it is her birthday, too," I pointed out, perhaps a little more sharply than intended. I felt the tension in my shoulders already. "Ellie, just be supportive today. It is a big day for your sister," she said, looking up with an exasperated sigh, finally meeting my gaze for the briefest of moments. It was a fleeting connection, one that I craved but quickly dashed away, reminding me that any effort I made to bring attention to myself would just be observed as a nuisance. Still, I held up my chin and smiled, but the smile felt more like a grimace as I made my way out to the driveway, where the centerpiece of the celebration awaited. The car was so sleek, almost too perfect. Its glassy, black surface showed reflections of the sun as it glimmered under the bright blue sky. $30,000, I muttered under my breath, the words tasting bitter and salty like bile as I kicked at a small stone in the gravel. "Ella, come look. Isn't it stunning?" Jess exuded a kind of gleefulness, I had rarely seen before. She bounced over, practically floating as she admired her new gift. "Mom, can I take a picture with it?" "Oh, I can post this right now. Everyone is going to be so jealous." "Of course, sweetheart. Let me fix your hair first." My mother rushed to her side, fussing over her again in a way that made it seem as though Jess was a porcelain doll and not a 21-year-old woman. I stood aside, witnessing their moment through the lens of my bitterness that played out like a home video on repeat. No matter how many times I told myself that this was just her birthday, just a gift, it would not matter how I felt about it, because every bit of love and attention poured there felt like a direct rejection of me. I'd always carefully curated my role, the invisible wallflower that clung to the shadows, but today the shadows were too dark, too blocking. I felt as if I was choking on that darkness. "You should post it on TikTok too," Jess exclaimed, flipping her hair dramatically to the side, striking a pose that perfectly captured the car and her face, lit up with joy, as if each camera click froze a moment in eternity that I could not break through. Was I this insignificant? Would my efforts to find my place forever be eclipsed by hair flips and photo ops? As they kept bickering over angles and lighting, I turned away, heading back toward the safety of the house. I could feel the heaviness in my chest grow with each step. "Just be supportive," I reminded myself. "You will have better days, better moments." Yet the words felt hollow. Rummaging through the cabinets in the kitchen, I grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and stood silently, staring out at the driveway. Each time they erupted into laughter, my heart sank further into an ocean I had all too often found myself swimming in. I knew it wasn't their fault. Most of the time, I tried to reason that it was just life. But I also knew it didn't have to be this way. I had tried so hard to be everything, not just for my mother, but for myself. Every grade, every effort in sports, every ounce of talent I put into my interests should have counted for something. But standing there, with water brimming in the glass, the silence echoed back all the ways I felt less than unnoticed and unloved. "Ella, come back and take another picture with us," Jess called out sweetly, and for a brief instant, I entertained the thought of joining them. But the truth was it would never be with us. It would always be just me slotting myself into a scene meant for my sister. And while I could pretend to smile for the cameras, inside, I would always feel like a ghost, drifting aimlessly between a world I longed to touch and the cold separation of my ongoing struggle. "Right back," I replied, but my heart sank. I slowly took a drink, letting the coolness rush down my throat to extinguish the fire raging inside. I felt a little more grounded, but I still didn't want to face them. Instead, I leaned against the counter, staring out into the driveway, where the excitement of my sister's birthday spiraled brighter than the sun glinting off that car. Once they were done, I figured I would go back out, perhaps fake a smile, or even pray for a moment of that warmth that eluded me. Maybe, if I just told myself life wasn't so unforgiving, I could create the love I wanted. But standing amidst their happiness, my stomach churned. The envy twisted within me, and I had no one to share it with, feeling like a balloon deflating away from the celebration. Then came the moment I dreaded. My mother turned to me, her eyes lighting up as she finally noticed me through the haze of scratching laughter and banter. "Ella, come on. Get close. This is your sister's day." That moment when my mother called me was like the crack of a wolf's howl amongst the sheep. "I can't. It is too much. I should just let you two have your moment," I said. I could feel the tension pushing me into a corner, an invisible panic that made me rethink the very bones of my resolve. "Nonsense," my mother hollered, waving me closer, and that wave felt like an order. "We want you here. Grab the keys. Come on, it will be fun." In that split second, my heartbeat thundered. All I could do was reluctantly step forward, the motion feeling as heavy as lead. Even as I grabbed the keys, I knew that they would not be my keys to claim. I would remain forever standing outside the glow. In my heart, I resented the dazzling sheen off the car, and Jess's fluttering gown of joy swirled around like a hurricane. And I realized that I stood as a mere observer in my life, always waiting to be noticed, always hoping for the acknowledgement I hoped would fill that empty space inside me. But it never did. The pictures clicked, the laughter continued, and that cold shiver of isolation swallowed me whole yet again. This birthday was just another reminder of my place beneath the surface, perhaps where I belonged, lost in the shadows as the center of attention danced away. At that moment, I felt not just invisible, but invisible with a purpose, perhaps deep within me. I could transform the sorrow into a burning ember, an ember that would one day become a fire, ready to consume everything in its path. And so I resolved silently that maybe one day I would not be invisible any more. The tension in our home was palpable, like a thick fog that wrapped around every corner, refusing to let go. I stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing the last of the dinner dishes, my mind drifting. My hands were submerged in warm, soapy water, but I felt cold, drained of energy and hope. Every day blurred together, my life becoming a cycle of responsibilities for a grandmother who barely recognized my efforts. As I looked out the window, the sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting shadows across the kitchen, much like the shadows growing in my heart. "You missed a spot," my sister chirped, her voice breaking me from my thoughts. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, an irritating grin plastered across her face. "I mean, seriously, how hard is it to wash a plate?" I turned my head slightly, avoiding her gaze. It wasn't my fault. I was trying to keep things together while she frolicked through life. "I'll get it later," I replied, trying to keep my tone even, peaceful even. But the words came out sharper than I intended. "What's the big deal? It's not like grandmother notices," she said, twirling a strand of her shiny hair around her finger. "Just let it slide for once." I slammed the dish into the water, splashing suds everywhere. The frustration simmered inside me, bubbling, but I bit down on my tongue. I didn't want to fight. I never wanted to fight. I just wanted to be recognized, for all my sacrifices to matter. As the tension clung to the air, the dinner bell rang from the other room. Dinner was rarely a pleasant affair. It was a stage where performances played out. I clutched a dish towel, wiped my hands, and headed to the dining room, already feeling the weight of another family gathering of unspoken words and tension. "Hey, everyone," my mother announced cheerfully, her voice echoing through the walls as if commanded to hold the family's attention. I offered a small smile, but it was mere muscle memory. My sister took her seat with all the grace of a queen, her blonde hair cascading down her shoulders, shining like gold. Meanwhile, I hovered near the door, untangling my own thoughts in a chaotic whirlwind as I felt invisible. "Tonight's special, your favorite, spaghetti and meatballs," my mother exclaimed, gesturing to the feast laid out on the table. It always was my mother's way to cook lavish meals, but they meant nothing to me when she scarcely recognized the efforts behind the scenes to keep everything afloat. My grandmother sat at the head of the table, her eyesight fading, but her ears undoubtedly tuned to my mother's dismissive praises for my sister. My heart quickened as I watched my sister accept her accolades with a false modesty that made me want to scream. "Thank you. Just love it," she laughed, throwing her head back. "Here's to family." My mother raised her glass, the sweet clink ringing in my ears like a death bell. "And to our beloved." A lump formed in my throat as she waved her glass toward my sister. "To the family favorite." The declaration hung heavily in the air, a noose waiting to tighten around my heart. My sister giggled, and I stole a glance at her, the way her eyes sparkled with delight while mine burned with indignation. "Thanks, Mom. You know I try my best," she chirped, fluttering her lashes. "Of course, dear. You're amazing in every way." I set my glass down too hard, causing water to slosh over the rim. All I wanted was one piece of the attention they threw her way. I had sacrificed my dreams, my nights, and my peace for the family I loved. For this moment, all the long nights and the tears spent holding my grandmother's hand seemed to mean nothing in their eyes. "Ella, are you okay?" My mother turned to me, brows furrowed in feigned concern. "You don't look so well." It was as if she felt pity for me for a fleeting second, just before her gaze slid back to my sister. I could feel the walls closing in, hot and suffocating. "I'm fine," I managed to say, the words barely a whisper. "Ella works so hard," my grandmother croaked, her voice trembling, and my heart leapt with hope, momentarily forgetting the sting of my mother's words. "Yeah, but it's nothing. Just keeping the place together while you all ignore everything," I said, the bitterness pooling inside me, demanding to be released. "She works hard." "Unlike some people," my grandmother muttered, and for a brief moment, a small smile flickered on my lips. It was a rare acknowledgement, and yet felt like a grain of sand at the shore of an ocean, easily lost among the waves. "Right, but she could lighten up." "Really, Ella," my sister interrupted, her smile faltering just a touch. "You don't need to be such a martyr." "We understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, the words bubbling up like poison escaping my lips. "Do you even care what I do? Care how hard things are?" "Ella, have some decorum," my mother warned, her eyes narrowing as if I had committed the worst of sins by simply expressing my feelings. "It's fine," my sister waved dismissively. "I guess no one cared to notice your hard work." "Maybe because no one has to notice when someone is just doing what they are supposed to do." I shot back, my voice rising in the simmering tension, echoing in the tight space of the dining room. "Honey, that's enough," my mother commanded, attempting to take control. This is not the time or place for this. No, it is, I insisted, my heart racing faster, the emotions coiling tighter like a snake ready to strike. It's about time someone noticed that everything I do is for this family, and no one sees it. The room plunged into silence, the kind of silence that rang in my ears like a dreadful melody. My sister's eyes widened in shock, and my mother's face turned a shade of crimson. The walls around me felt like they were closing in, stretching tight like a drum. I care. I care about this family more than anyone, and I am tired of being the one that does everything while you play around like you matter more. I shouted, my voice breaking under the weight of all that I had held inside for so long. Ella, my grandmother whispered, reaching out for me, but I felt the distance I had created now between us all, the gap widening like a chasm. I felt my chest heave, the floodgates of frustration ready to break through. And then I just fell silent, feeling utterly defeated. I gathered myself, wishing to take the words back, to tame the storm brewing inside my chest. But deep down, I knew I could not. Emotional wound of being overlooked surged in me, and I realized it would no longer stand dormant. Maybe it's time to focus on what really matters, my mother said coolly, dismissing my outburst with the flick of her hand, as if waving away smoke. And that's family. Unity rather than discord. Unity, I thought, my insides churning with anger. What did she know about unity when all it meant was bearing the weight of everyone else's expectations, while my own fell away like autumn leaves? Unity. You call this unity? I felt reckless as I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is just me being a doormat. I turned on my heel and stomped toward the hallway, my heart pounding like a war drum. Ella, where are you going? My mother called after me, her voice tinged with urgency. Anywhere but here, I shot back. And as I made my way down the hallway, I could hear the muffled voices behind me, slurring together into an unrecognizable murmur. Once upstairs in my room, I paused for a moment, breathing heavily, my heart racing. The shadows painted a dismal picture across the walls, stretching like the emotions roiling inside me. I felt raw, unforgiving. I knew then that something had to change. It was like a dam had broken, unleashing a rush of bottled-up anger that had collected far too long. I closed my eyes and tried to clear my mind, tried to push the hurt and resentment away. But they clawed fiercely at me, relentless and persistent. The pattern of sacrifice that had led to nothing left me hollow. And yet, something fiercely stubborn in me rose to the surface. That night, as I lay awake, exhaustion settling into my bones, I could not escape the sense of clarity that surged in me. No longer would I sit in the shadows unnoticed. I would break free. The tipping point had been reached, the floodgates ready to burst further. But this time, I would take control. This time, the empty pit inside me would fill with something stronger. Revenge stood outside my sister's room, my heart pounding louder than a drum roll in the silence of our home. Each beat seemed to echo my resolve, the gravity of what I was about to do almost suffocating me. The faint sound of the neighborhood children playing outside drifted through the open window, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I could almost hear their laughter mocking my situation. I was determined to make a statement, to disrupt the balance my mother had so carefully constructed between us. As I creaked the door open, the familiar scent of my sister's room enveloped me like a warm blanket, an unwelcome reminder of the many times I had been the second choice. The walls were plastered with posters of athletes basking in the glory of championship victories. Her beloved sports memorabilia was displayed proudly on shelves, each piece a testament to her passion, her dedication. I felt a flicker of familiarity, bittersweet, igniting a deeper thread of resentment. I had spent years in her shadow, reminding myself that my worth would never be measured by trophies or trading cards. But in moments like these, all I could think about was how my mother had always favored her in ways I couldn't understand. Shaking off the wave of nostalgia, I stepped into the room and shut the door behind me with deliberate softness. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head, but nothing could prepare me for the sheer weight of my actions. I moved with purpose, letting my adrenaline fuel my every motion. I quickly took stock of the room, my eyes darting over the baseball bats hung like trophies, jerseys draped across the chair, and trophies winking at me from the corner. Each piece held a story, a memory, a thread of her identity. But I couldn't hesitate. I needed to prove my point, to take a stand against all those years of being overlooked. I grabbed the first item that caught my eye, a signed baseball, its leather still shining bright and its stitches begging for a new owner. My sister would kill me if she knew I was doing this, but it was too late to focus on that now. I shoved it into a duffel bag and continued collecting like a raccoon rummaging through trash. I was careful, methodical. Piece by piece, the bag filled with her memories, each item representing not just a moment in time, but also the imbalance of love and attention I had endured for too long. "You're going to regret this," I whispered to myself as I pulled out a framed photograph of her holding a trophy. She wore a wide grin, that awful pride radiating off her like sunlight. "You're doing this for a good cause," I muttered, trying to convince myself as I tucked it away, almost reverently. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, regret mixing with anger, satisfaction colliding with guilt. But I pushed it all down, focusing solely on the goal ahead. As I emptied her shelves, the ghosts of our childhood memories surged forward. I recalled those countless afternoons spent watching her bask in the glow of our mother's attention, the compliments rolling off her tongue in sweet, syrupy layers. "You're the best, honey." I could still feel the stab of envy as our mother's arms wrapped around her in a fierce embrace. My stomach twisted at the thought of being invisible, lost in someone else's light. "No more," I said aloud, adding a limited edition jersey to the bag. "No more." It was my mantra, a reminder that this was necessary. I was reclaiming my power, even if it meant using my sister's emotional connection against her. Just as I reached for the last item, a framed letter from a retired athlete who had once sent a personal note to her, I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Panic surged through me. My sister was back from work. I launched myself back across the room, hastily arranging the chaos within the bag while scrambling for a place to hide. My heart thudded with fear, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if it was the thrill of being caught or the realization that everything was about to change. My sister called out, a hint of confusion slipping into her voice. Are you home? Shit, shit, shit. I cursed silently, my fingers fumbling as I rushed to shove the bag underneath her bed, praying it would remain undetected. I pressed my back against the wall beside the door, willing my breath to stay as quiet as a whisper. I could hear her footsteps growing closer, each one echoing in my head like a countdown to disaster. Ella, she repeated, this time louder, as if sensing my hidden presence. I closed my eyes, squeezing them shut, straining to hear her next move. The door swung open, and she stepped inside, her expression shifting from mild confusion to dread as she took in the disarray. What the hell? She mumbled, crossing the threshold in disbelief. I bit my lip, praying for the perfect moment. She glanced around, scanning her room for signs of who had invaded her sacred space. Each passing second was like a knife twisting in my gut, urging me to leap out and face her. If only she understood, I thought. If only she would acknowledge everything I have endured. Her eyes drifted to the duffel bag peeking from beneath the bed. I swore I could hear her heart shattering as she knelt down, pulling on the zipper. What did you do? The disbelief morphed into rage, her voice a beast awakened. I borrowed some things, I replied, finally stepping out of my hiding spot, feeling strangely powerful under the weight of my decision. Borrowed. Ella, this is my entire collection. You can't just take this from me. Her voice was a mixture of anger and pain, slicing through my resolve. You never respected me or my space. I spat back, the words flowing like venom. Mom has always put you first. I'm tired of living in your shadow. My own voice shook, the thrill of the plan swelling into an unfamiliar rage I hadn't anticipated. Stood up, and for a moment, we shared a silent understanding. A mix of fury and disbelief painted across her face, an unwelcome reflection of my own turmoil. You took everything that matters to me, Ella. You sold it. For what? To prove a point to Mom. No, I shouted, passion flaring in my chest like a wildfire. I did this for us. To make her see you're not the golden child, to make her recognize my worth. Her eyes narrowed, tears pooling but anger blazing. And this was your plan, to steal things that meant the world to me. You think this is going to change Mom's mind. You think she will see you differently now. I had no choice. I felt the weight of my decisions closing in, revealing the pain I had thought I could outsmart. It's always been you, the favorite. Just this once, I wanted you to feel the way I feel every day. This isn't how you fight. My sister's voice trembled, every word weighing down the air between us. This only makes us enemies. Maybe it's time we faced the truth. Maybe it's time Mom saw the truth, I replied, every syllable laced with desperation. Each second felt like a lifetime as our parallel worlds collided, and we each tried to make sense of the chaos we had created. You broke my trust, she shouted, those words slicing through me. This isn't what sisters do. Right, because you've always put me first, haven't you? I retorted, feeling the spark of regret flare into bitterness. I'm tired of being the one left behind, the one forced to pick up the pieces of a life we never really chose. Our voices bounced off the walls, an echo of our childhood disputes. But this time it felt heavier, more final, an irreversible shift in our once unbreakable bond. I watched her crumble, the fire in her eyes extinguished, leaving behind betrayal instead. Just, just get out, she said softly, each word hitting me like a hammer. Get out of my room. The plea stung, and for a second, I hesitated, thinking maybe I could offer a resolution, a way to heal. But the sacrifice I had made to reclaim myself surged through me like molten lava, and I turned away, leaving her engulfed in disbelief and sorrow. Shutting the door behind me, I walked away slowly, my heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and despair. I had crossed a line, forged a path into uncharted territory, and yet the taste of victory sat bitter on my tongue. I had wanted a revolution, but had unleashed destruction. As I made my way down the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had started something that could never be taken back. The chaos of my actions echoed in my mind, and in that moment, I realized that sometimes revenge came at a cost too high to bear. The storm broke that evening when my sister discovered the betrayal. I could see the shock and disbelief wash over her face, a moment frozen in time as she stood in the center of her room, the walls adorned with faded posters of pop stars and vibrant photographs from summers past. My heart raced as I watched her frantically search every corner, her hands trembling with a desperate urgency, yanking open drawers, tossing aside clothes, and rifling through her beloved trinkets. It felt surreal, the way her face shifted from confusion to dawning horror, like a cloudburst on a sunlit day, the sky suddenly turning dark and heavy. I felt an eerie calmness wash over me, as if I were watching a scene play out in a movie, one where I was safely detached, yet creatively invested, almost reveling in the chaos that unfolded around us. "Where is it? Where is it?" she shouted, her voice cracking, a whirlwind of emotions swirling around the air. My fingers twitched at my sides, itching to respond, but I locked them down, relishing the confusion in her eyes as they darted around the room, grasping at a reality she was unwilling to face. "I can't find my collection. You were the last one in here." Each word dripped with accusation, as if I were the very thief that had ripped away her most prized possessions. "It's not here," I said, my voice uncharacteristically steady, even as I felt the tension in the room pulse like an electric current. I took a step closer, savoring the smell of her perfume, a delicate blend of vanilla and jasmine that reminded me of childhood celebrations, where laughter echoed off the walls like music in our home. "You need to calm down. It's just stuff, isn't it?" The words tasted bitter on my tongue, as if the saccharine memories of our youth had turned sour, and I cringed inside. Her expression transformed into one of disbelief, like I had slapped her across the face. "Just stuff," she repeated, incredulous. "You have no idea what it meant to me. They were my memories, my happiness." Her voice quivered, and I hated that I didn't feel remorse. Instead, I felt a strange satisfaction tinged with the thrill of revenge, a means to an end I had envisioned for so long. "Do you really think it is the stuff that matters?" I pressed, stepping forward again. I could almost taste the air thick with tension, mingled with her despair. It is the attention your mother gave you every time she praised your so-called talents. She has showered you with money and affection since we were little. What about the nights I sat in my own room, feeling like a ghost? I barely recognized the intensity in my own voice, yet I reveled in the unfolding emotional upheaval. My sister's cheeks flushed with anger, and she clenched her fists, the jewelry on her fingers jingling like disjointed chimes caught in a sudden wind. I never asked for her love, she yelled, tears pooling in her eyes like a reflection of the storm outside, a tempest that mirrored the hurricane brewing within the four walls of her sanctuary. I had no idea. How could you possibly think I wanted any of this? The desperation in her tone tore at my heart, and I felt an instinct to reach out to her, to comfort her, to take back the words I had spoken. But I couldn't. The injustice I had suffered was too raw, a wound that had festered for years without any acknowledgement or healing. Is that really true? I countered, the bitterness in my own voice biting deep into the air between us. You didn't know how your mother would reward you while I sat unnoticed. I gestured dramatically around her room, hoping the symbolism of her treasures would punctuate my point. All those trophies, those frilly dresses, my mother never once thought to pay me the same mind. She took a shaky breath, her fury spilling over into more than just words. You are insane. You can't come in here and take everything from me, just because you feel left out. The heartbreak in her cry felt like shards of glass piercing through me, and a part of me flinched at the accusation. Was I insane for wanting justice, for wanting to shine a light on the favoritism that had shaped our lives? I'm not taking anything from you, I replied, my counter more of a whisper now. I was firm in my resolve, even if my heart ached for her. I am simply showing you the truth your mother has woven into a web, one that has acted like a chokehold on us both. You are living in a beautiful fantasy, while I am trapped in this dark reality. Before she could respond, my mother appeared in the doorway, her figure framed by the dim light. Her eyes widened, slowly absorbing the chaotic tableau in front of her, her firstborn angry and distressed, and her youngest standing defiantly amid torn emotions. Instantly, I knew she had heard the budding argument, knew she had an inkling of the web. What is going on? She demanded, her tone icy, aiming to regain control over the unraveling scenario. My sister turned to our mother, eyes glistening like a sea glass under harsh sunlight. She stole my collection, Mom. She took everything from me because she is jealous. Each word dripped with venom, her voice as unyielding as a wave crashing against the shore. Ella, is that true? Our mother turned her gaze toward me, her expression shifting like fog, swirling in the dawn light. I felt the weight of her scrutiny, not with fear, but with an underlying promise of vengeance, long overdue. It is not stolen. I took them to help her face the reality of your favoritism. I let the words tumble out with a sense of finality, watching the white-hot rage rise in my mother's eyes. While you pampered her with gifts, I was left to fade into nothingness, and I will not let you pretend that it doesn't matter anymore. In that moment, my mother seemed almost stunned, her brows knitting together as if trying to formulate a response. Ella, she began, but I could hear the shakiness in her voice. I leaned into it, as if taking a step closer to the precipice of truth that had long been hidden. I am not the one who should feel guilty, I declared, knowing full well the burden began and ended with her choices. You've both been living in your comfortable illusion. Can't you see it? My own heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the heavy silence that followed my proclamation. Tears brimming at the edges of my sister's, now frantic gaze, could no longer hold the ocean back. I can't believe you would do this, she said, barely above a whisper, as if acknowledging the depth of her feelings would somehow invalidate them. You've always been so bitter, so angry. Did you ever stop to think about me? I've always thought about you, I snapped, the bluntness shaking the very air between us. My chest tightened as I turned my emotions back toward myself, the tangled mess of resentment and hurt shifting. I thought about you every single time I watched you get everything you wanted, while I sat in the dark waiting for a little bit of attention. Our mother stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace, her hair framing her face like a halo battling against the very storm she had created. Ella, you need to calm down, she said, but her voice was no longer the familiar soothing balm I once relied on. It felt raw, barren like the cracked earth after a devastating drought. No, Mom, I won't be calm anymore, I practically shouted. The time has come to acknowledge what you've done, how you've shaped us both differently. Do you even care how this affects us? How it has chipped away at the love we once had? I pulled in breath through my trembling body, hoping to hold together my crumbling facade. My sister stood in utter devastation, the tears spilling down her cheeks. The storm inside her was reflected in her gaze, confusion giving way to sadness, pain, and ultimately understanding. I could feel her unraveling, just like the threads of our lives had been, so tightly woven, but now coming undone. Why did you think you could hurt me like this? She asked, her voice breaking. She seemed far away, as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into the unknown depths. Because it has hurt me all these years, I said, my own voice softening as I took a step forward. I was a shadow in our mother's spotlight, the daughter who faded into darkness. I couldn't stand by and let her put you on the pedestal forever. I hated how I felt almost guilty for letting my anger spill, like it made me less deserving. But the relief of finally speaking my truth felt liberating. Our mother shifted uncomfortably, guilt creeping into her eyes like vines, threatening to suffocate a once vibrant tree. You both need to understand. But in her voice, I sensed she was already retreating, caught somewhere between disbelief and denial. No, my sister and I said simultaneously. The unity of our voices snapped like a taut string, startling us both. But deep down, we both knew the unspoken truce we were forming, one born from the ashes of confrontation. I let the weight of my emotions hang heavy in the air, aware that the time had come for us to start healing or causing even deeper wounds. As I looked at my sister, her heartbreak resonating deep within me, I could finally allow myself to hope for something new to grow from all this destruction. We were not enemies, despite everything. We were simply two products of a mother who had failed to see the beauty in our differences. "I am not your enemy," I finally whispered, letting the reality of our bond seep through the agony of the moment. My sister's gaze softened, tears still glistening in her eyes. "I don't want to lose you," she said quietly, and in those words, we both felt the weight of every tension that had rippled through our lives. But before we could shift any further into understanding, my mother spoke again, her tone still suffocating, a swirling mist of confusion and denial. "You cannot expect me to understand this. You are both being unreasonable." No, this time it was my sister who stepped closer, her voice trembling yet fierce. "We refuse to be silenced anymore. It's time for you to face your actions, Mom." "I cannot do this right now," our mother shot back, her voice wavering as she took a step back, the denial bleeding through the cracks. I need to think. We can talk later." But I knew that later was just an escape, a delay in the inevitable reckoning that awaited us all. The storm that had broken that evening was only just beginning. The ripples from this confrontation would stretch far beyond the walls of her room, into the corners of our home, reverberating with the cries of acceptance, regret, and the hope for reconciliation. In that charged moment, with truth laid bare before us, the storm brewed not outside, but within, promising that no one could escape its reach in the wake of my actions. The stillness of our house echoed the truth I had so long tried to scream, but had remained silent within the walls of my heart. Each corner that I passed carried with it the weight of the memories embedded in the fabric of our family, once vibrant, now dimmed by the shadows of betrayal and favoritism. I stood in the kitchen, where the sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the table where my sister and I once shared breakfast together, laughter bouncing off the walls like bubbles. Now, the air felt thick with tension, a reminder of the chasm that had widened between us after I finally lifted the veil. My mother stood by the sink, wringing her hands under the running water, her face a blend of disbelief and guilt as she stared out at the garden we had spent countless afternoons tending together. "I never thought it would come to this." Her voice trembled, breaking the silence, sounding almost like a plea for understanding. While guilt flickered across her features, I could not muster the sympathy I once would have. "What did you expect?" I shot back, unable to hold back the bitterness surging in my veins. "You made your choice, Mom. I simply revealed it." She turned to face me, her eyes glistening, the deep lines on her face telling years of battle, but I could not allow her emotional turmoil to move me. "You don't understand how hard this is for me," she replied, her words spilling over like a torrent, yet they fell flat on my ears. Choosing favorites wasn't something I planned. It just happened. I felt a swell of anger rise within me, heat flooding my cheeks as I stepped closer, feeling almost weightless in my newfound strength. "It just happened. You think that justifies giving her everything while I barely got scraps. The car, the money, the endless accolades. None of it means anything if it comes at the expense of another's pain." My voice remained steady, my resolve as solid as the granite countertop beneath my hands. The sound of footsteps snapped my attention toward the hallway, where my sister lingered, her frame silhouetted by the dim light seeping through the doorway. As I met her gaze, I felt an unsettling mixture of fear and defiance dance in my chest. She was standing at the precipice of our fractured bond, uncertainty etching her features. "What is going on?" she asked cautiously, her eyes darting between me and our mother. "Just the usual family drama," I replied, attempting to inject humor into the tension. But it fell short, tasting bitter on my tongue. "Did you need something, or are you just eavesdropping, Ella?" Her voice was soft, hesitant, yet tinged with frustration. "I came to talk to Mom about how upset I am about all of this too. I didn't think it would turn into another argument." "Upset? Really?" I laughed, though there was no joy in it, just a bitter edge. "Why weren't you upset before? It was okay when you were getting everything while I sat in the corner." "This isn't helping," my sister exclaimed, throwing her arms up in exasperation. "None of us is going to win by fighting like this." I took a deep breath, conscious of the way my chest felt tight, heavy with emotions I had managed to push away. "I have to do what's right for me. I can't hide in the shadows anymore. And it's time you stop pretending that everything is fine just because you got everything handed to you." "Everything?" she scoffed, a hesitant crack in her confidence. "You think I wanted to take anything away from you? Mom never even asked what I wanted, you know. I don't even know how to deal with this. Did you ever stop to think how your everything made me feel?" I shot back, unable to restrain the tremor in my voice, my heart racing as the realization crashed over me like a wave. "It feels like I always needed to shout just to be heard in this family. It feels like I mattered so little." She blinked, taken aback, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of understanding spark in her eyes. "I want to understand, but I don't know how." "Start by listening," I pressed, unwilling to back down. "But you must also face Mom just like I did. I don't want to be in the middle of this. Then pick a side." I heard the words escape me, wild and raw, fueled by years of suppressed anger that ripped through me like a storm. In that moment, I realized how desperately I longed for her to understand my pain, to recognize the wounds that had festered beneath the surface. My mother stepped forward, her voice a frantic whisper. "Let's not do this now. We need to know." I cut her off, the authority in my voice surprising even me. "You chose to bury the truth for so long. Now it's time we all faced it, because I won't hide anymore, and neither should you." The kitchen fell silent, our breaths visible in the cool air lingering between us. The tension was a tangible entity, wrapping us in its suffocating embrace, while reality sank deep. I could almost touch the fracture that had developed between us, malleable yet unyielding beneath our shared skin, splitting our family into pieces, leaving only fragments behind. "I don't want this," my sister muttered after an agonizing pause, tears glimmering in her eyes. "But I also don't want to lose you. Any of you." Her voice carried an edge of desperation, and I could feel her pain. "I don't want to lose you either, but things can't go back to how they were." The truth poured out of me like molten lava, bubbling and uncontrollable, driven by the newfound sense of empowerment that coursed through my veins. "I am tired of being invisible, of dimming my light for the sake of family loyalty that never had a chance to stand on equal ground." Finally, my mother swallowed hard, the fight leaving her eyes. She felt small before us now, a woman stripped of her armor, revealing the vulnerability she had hidden for years. I never wanted to hurt either of you. I just wanted to protect you. But at what cost? I pushed back, relentless, needing her to comprehend the weight of her actions. You've left us broken, and pretending everything is okay won't change that. It never has. The words echoed in the silence, an earthquake of truth tearing through the remnants of what once felt like belonging. As I spoke, I felt chains loosening their grip, crushing limitations released as I tasted the power of my voice. What do we need to do? My sister asked, her voice trembling like a fledgling bird learning to navigate a turbulent sky. We get stronger, together. But only if you choose to own your part too, I said, my heart racing, digging deeper into the truth that was both a wound and a connection. Mother can't do this alone anymore, and it isn't fair to keep letting her think it's okay. It is going to take time, my sister murmured, a tremor in her words as she looked toward our mother, seeking an ally in the storm. We can heal, but it is going to take effort. I know, I replied with a gentler edge, the sting of anger softening into a bittersweet understanding. But we can do this together. I felt a sense of liberation unfolding within me, as if each harsh word that flew from my lips created space for the love I craved, even if it felt buried beneath years of hurt. It was time to build something new. I found clarity in embracing a truth that had always dwelled in the depths of my heart, emerging from the shadows cast by my mother's love. Through the doorway, the sunlight illuminated the living room, revealing the chaos we had often ignored. But now, it felt glimmering with hope. I took a step back, watching as my sister turned to our mother, the questions sparking in her eyes. Will you really try? She asked softly. Our mother hesitated, her face breaking under the strain of years, filled with regret. Yes, I will do everything I can, she replied, her voice steady, filled with a sincerity I hadn't heard for so long. In that moment, the fractures that once felt insurmountable softened, allowing the air around us to lighten, buoyed by the possibility of rebuilding. I felt the weight of the past starting to lift, a heavy fog clearing as the warmth of potential enveloped us. I discovered a newfound sense of empowerment, a sense of self-worth I had long denied. I would no longer be defined by our family's damage, nor would I continue to elevate it over my own happiness. I felt alive and liberated, embracing the journey forward. Together, we began to write a new chapter, one where the ghosts of favoritism faded into whispers, and the truth became the foundation of our path. I emerged stronger from the shadows of familial struggle, ready to weave my story anew. Each word a promise to myself that I would forge my own road, no longer hidden in the darkness.